I like to demonstrate this stuff by example. It's just so much easier to explain what's going on. So I've got a couple of examples here. First of all, the act and the country table are exactly the same. They have the same number of columns and the same number of data types. Obviously, they don't have the same data, but running a union on them is quite fine. It basically matches Paul McCartney, USA. There's a country, there's one country. We have one country record. So that's a very simple union. Now let's try these two tables. This one is going to give me an error. Why? Because the query block has an incorrect number of result columns. Let's go into SQL Plus just to describe it quickly. Describe act and describe show. What we see there is 2 columns, what we see there is 5 columns. If you try to do a union on 2 columns and 5 columns, it gives you an error. It has to be the same number of columns. You also have to match the data types. So now let's go and check data types. Union requires the matching of data types. This is a string column. This is an integer. If I run this, it will give me a problem again. Expression must have the same data type as the corresponding expression. And obviously, if I go and try to add a date onto that, we'll then have a string followed by a number followed by a date, which just gives me the same error again. And we can also select information from multiple schemas. In other words, this will pull data from a table called act in the system schema, use the set operator to pull shows act and find whatever the local act table is. I went into the system schema and I created the act table, so I'm going to go and minimize this and join up to the system schema, paste this. What I did was I created the act table, or a copy of it, in system, and I granted access. So all this is doing is saying, go and get the rows from system act, go and also look across into another schema that shows act, and then pull the current table in the current schema again. Anyway, it's just showing you can go across schemas and do a union clause there. Now let's look specifically at union, intersect versus minus. So getting out of system again, going back into shows, what we have first of all is we have star from act. What do we have in the act table? In the act table we have, let's order it, order by 1. We'll look at order later on in a later chapter. It says we've gone from 1 to 54. And if we go and do the same thing for the category table, and I need to hit the right keys there, hit the play button, here we go from 1 to 34. I'm looking at the act ID and the category ID. So now let's get the information or the IDs from both of these tables. What do we get? It says I get 1, 2, 3, 4, 54 rows with no duplicates. If I change this to all, and I should actually copy this into here, what's it going to do here? Quite simply, it's going to give me all the duplicates. It's sorted, so I have 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3. We're getting the IDs from both tables. If we go down to 34, we're going to find that after 34 we've got distinct values. Simple as that. That's what all does. What does intersect do? Intersect is going to find the values that intersect between the two data sources. In other words, we're going to find all the IDs that are in both tables once. 1 down to the bottom, 34. Now let's go to minus. What does it do? It finds everything that is in the act table that is not in the category table. So it will start at 35 and go to 54. That gives you a very simple demonstration of what union, union-all, intersect and minus actually do. The count function is something that we left out in an earlier movie, partly because it's a widely used function but for odd things sometimes. And once again, I could have actually counted the data using this function far more easily. As you can see again, 34 rows, 54 rows, and then when we count distinct on the venue table, we count the unique venue IDs on the show table. So if we go down to here and just do select count, venue ID from show. All this is showing you is that there are 155 rows in the show table, but if you count distinct, the count function will allow you to count the distinct values across the show table on the venue ID. I could have used the count function to show the number of values in these views, and I could even do something like this, say taking the minus function here, wipe this out. I can actually do this and wrap this in the from clause and find all the rows of act minus category. 54 minus 34 rows is 20 rows. We will use the count function throughout all the Oracle courses that I'm building here. So this is your first solid introduction to it. It's very useful. It's used all over the place.